Hello, everyone. We are back. Welcome to Alia and Co., the podcast where we talk about complicated things, but we make them easy. So today, our topic is failure. I feel like we've all had fails in our lives. I would say when it comes to business, you could be failing, careers, sometimes that happens, relationships, and these are really big ones. But I think that a lot of times how you handle those smaller fails really does have a basis in the way that you handle the larger ones. So, for example, it's like if you're talking to somebody and you forget their name mid-sentence and you've known them for a while, that's a fail, right? Or maybe even like ordering something off of the internet and not looking like it was what you saw it to be, or maybe like at 3 a.m. you might be deep stalking somebody and like you accidentally like a pic of theirs from like 6 years ago. So I think that sometimes failure can also be in a way where you're not even trying, and that might be failing. So there's so many different ways. And I think today you'll be very pleased with the guests that we have because there's a lot of relevancy when it comes to his profession. He is a comedian. And he has been a finalist in national competitions. The Kenan Thompson one, the guy from SNL, that's pretty amazing. He is a film writer or screener or what? Filmmaker. But the thing is, not just any old filmmaker. He's been at like national festivals in Cannes and like in LA and Austin, like winning awards, and he's also a writer. So is there anything that I have forgotten? Welcome, Brad Kofman.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you for being here.
Yeah, I'm happy to be the face of failure.
The face of failure. Have you forgot like anything that I've left out or?
No, I'm just a comedian who
Okay.
likes to do things and be creative.
Okay, all right, interesting. Well, I'm going to tell you, and I'm going to ask you.
Mm-hmm.
When was your most recent fail? Because I'm going to tell you my most recent one. It was
Okay.
this morning because
Yeah.
allegedly I'm supposed to be on a keto diet, and I found 2 cupcakes, and so I am failing at being in keto. So how about you?
Where did you find them?
I don't know.
In the wild?
Yeah, they were on my dining table this
Okay,
morning.
so you had them.
They were out,
Okay.
and it's like if you see food, you have to eat it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, you kind of set yourself up for failure there.
I don't know. I did not put those cupcakes there.
Oh, you
so
didn't?
I was lured into it.
Yeah, for sure. You know what? You can't do a keto diet and not cheat every once in a while.
Yeah.
We're not robots.
No, we're not
Yeah.
robots. No. So tell me about your most recent failure.
My most recent failure? Probably, I feel like I fail every day. But like on a larger scale, I would say my last failure was, you go on the road a lot and you hope all the shows sell out and do well, but sometimes they don't. So you might show up to a show that has 12 people at it, and that just sucks, and it feels like a failure. But, it doesn't always have to be. You could turn it around and just have a really good time with the 12 people are there. I made all 12 people get on stage and sit like cross-legged, and I just told them stories, and it ended up being really fun and cool, but like definitely was a failure from like a financial standpoint because I definitely get paid more when I sell out the shows.
Yeah.
But yeah, that happens all the time.
What is it? Location that was kind of like someplace where it was a little bit more remote, or where was the location?
It was actually in Houston.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
But it was like a venue that was trying to do comedy that really wasn't set up for it. And, they called me in to do it and wanted a partner. And, I'm not that big of a draw, so I need a little bit of a support behind me and some marketing. And, it just, this one happened to be a failure.
Yeah. But you know what, though? That's the journey, I would say.
Totally.
And I mean, I've seen comedians that I was at the Comedy Cellar and I had Bill Burr drop by. And he wasn't not funny. He was testing some of his jokes, right? Because that's where they go do their open mics and stuff like that, like these comedians that have made it, right? You got to work your material and see what is non-inflammatory enough to be susceptible to someone laughing, I would say, and so, but it's true. So now I want to understand. How did you even decide that this was something that you wanted to do?
Comedy?
Yeah.
Comedy was always a big part of my family growing up.
Okay.
It felt like you didn't get heard unless you were funny.
Okay.
And I just remember being at the dinner table and like fighting and competing with my sister to like be funny.
How many siblings were you?
Just the two of
Just
us.
the two,
Yeah.
okay. Mhm.
So me and my sister would try and be funny, and there was always like lessons from my family along the way. Like my stepdad, he's very funny. But he would, like when you're a little kid and you latch onto something funny, you want to repeat it, repeat it, repeat
Yeah.
it, repeat it. And he'd always be like, like you kind of, what would he say? I don't know exactly what he definitely didn't say this, but like you kind of like busted your nut already. Like he said that in like a parental way, but that's the best analogy I can think of. Like we had the funny moment, now move on to something else, or bring it up 20, 30 minutes later when we've forgotten.
Right. Or to someone else that hasn't heard it before.
Exactly, or to someone else. Also, just like telling stories, like only true stories are really funny, or specific details from true events that you could put into a story.
Interesting.
Like it's for whatever reason, and I've learned this to be true in comedy too. When you tell a true story, now you could embellish. That story always seems to resonate more and be funnier because people know you're calling on specific real examples. Even if you're a great actor and you make them up, people still know it's kind of like this didn't really happen. There's something in our psyches that lets us know.
Yeah.
So all these sorts of lessons on how to be funny and like just fighting for attention and all that. And growing up, I was actually a musician all through high school, into college, and I was a musician for years. And then I just struggled with the band dynamic. Like I've been on tours, I've slept in vans, I've been in every kind of band you can imagine. And we would start out really well, and then it would always turn into like I was more dedicated than they were, or we'd have like a group of equally dedicated people. Let's practice, let's write, let's like market, let's do this. And then egos would get in the way. And I just found stand-up where I was like, I already like talking to people. I already like doing this. And I could do this and push myself as far as I want, not have to rely on anybody else.
And it's also kind of like an ego death in a way, I would say, just getting out there and knowing that not everybody's going to think that you're funny. Do you think maybe that has a little bit of something?
I would call it more like a death of not so much ego, but maybe the part of your ego that cares what people think, like you said. Like you have to be really comfortable getting embarrassed. You have to be really comfortable failing. You have to, I mean, that's all it is. It's failing for years and years and years until you find a way to be funny. There's very few people I've seen try it one time and then be funny immediately. I could think of maybe 2 or 3.
Who are these? I mean, they have to be somebody that's made it, right? Like, so who was that? Because I'm very curious to know.
Sadly, a friend of mine who I knew from Chicago, well, he passed away recently, but he had been doing it for not that long, but like, he would just grab Ken Flores, R.I.P. But he would just grab the mic and he was just a funny guy in a way I've never seen before. Like there was almost no needing to learn the craft. He could just talk and make people laugh. And it was very cool. And that's something I've never seen before outside of him and maybe one other person. Calvin Evans is who I'm thinking of. He's a comic in Chicago. I work with him a lot. But like, he did his first time at Zanies. This was years ago before I started, and he just crushed. And then he just kept going, and he started at a level where he was good, where I think most normal people and most of us out here started at a level where we think we're good, and you have to have a level of delusion and like just this overconfidence that like what is wrong with everybody? They don't think I'm funny. This is very funny.
Yeah, right.
And then you find your niche. So there's only 2 people I can think of actually.
That's amazing. And so I'm just kind of curious, like in a way you've never seen before, you have to clue us into that. Like how in what way were they funny? Is there like different, like a genre that has been undiscovered yet? Or like how were they funny?
No, the way I've never seen before, meaning like there was no build up and like struggle.
Right.
And like most people will struggle for like 2 years and just be undeniably bad. But you can watch somebody and go, there's something in there. They will be funny one day.
Yeah.
And then they develop the craft and they become funny and they learn how to timing and cadence and how to tell jokes and how to write jokes and how to tell stories. And it is a craft. But what I mean, I haven't seen before, like picked up the mic, just started talking and had this room destroyed,
Right.
killed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's pretty amazing. And I think a lot of it, like when you were talking about your childhood, and like even Robin Williams, is it something that is innate, do you think, or is it something that like you have to kind of work at outside of those situations that you mentioned?
That's a good question. I think anybody can learn to be funny. Some people can't. But I do think that comedy, actual comedy that like people would go seek out and want to watch on a professional level is usually a coping mechanism experienced through some kind of trauma. And it almost feels like the bigger the trauma, the funnier the person. Because like in the Robin Williams example, obviously super sad, depressed guy. Nobody would know outside of like very few close friends with him. But yeah, he just wanted to make his mom laugh in that example. And he took it to an extreme, right? And maybe he never was able to. I don't know. But like I feel like comedy comes from it's tragedy plus timing, right? But like the tragedy is what happens to you as a child, what happens to you in your life, the ridiculousness that like we live in and grow up in and whatever. Like if you could find humor in it, you can be a funny person. Some people can't.
Yeah. So yeah, that's definitely interesting. So now I got to ask you, what are your traumas?
Oh, my traumas?
Not in any I mean, like,
No,
what's
no.
your basic like persona? Like, what do you? I know that you play the guitar,
Sure.
which is super cool. You do a bunch of improv, and then look, what's your comedic style? Are you self-deprecating? Are you like observational? Like, what kind of?
You know, a lot of people ask me that question. I've never really known how to answer it. I would say like probably somewhat observational and like I like to take real stories and examples from my life. And, you know, like, I think my style is just really trying to be funny. Like it can, and I think that's the root of it. People all get caught up in, and I mean comedians, not like you asking the question, get caught up in, oh, what's your style? Are you gonna be a dark comic? It's just like, you could be a mix of all that. Just be funny.
Yeah.
And to go back to your earlier, what's my trauma? I have a very interesting father. I have a stepdad who raised me for the most part. I was also a little bit raised by my grandparents growing up. You know, the dynamic between my stepdad and my mom was always very funny in the house. So not so much trauma, but just being around funny. Never, ever liked school. I've always tried to like escape school and get out. I think I missed a lot more high school than I went to. You know, just like out with friends doing that, just getting into trouble a lot.
Kid? Were you popular? What's your...
I wasn't a popular kid, although I had like a big group of friends that we would hang out with. I was more like, I would go hang out with my friends and smoke weed and go to band practice instead of going to school.
Yeah.
And then a lot of kids from school would like come to where we would practice with our band and come hang out. You know, it was this tiny little basement, probably the size of this room, and we're all chain smoking cigarettes and drinking like a fifth of whiskey, and we thought we were cool.
Right.
But no, I wasn't like going to all the football games and all that. And I also went to a really big school. There was like 1,800 people in my class.
Oh, that's a lot.
So there was like a couple kids that like everybody knew, but mostly like we all just got along with like different cliques of people. And I was able to like bounce between different cliques. But I never had like a huge group of friends outside of my band.
Okay. So your comedy is influenced by definitely, perhaps not even so much as, specific individuals in your life, but just relationally, like, the fact that you have had all of these like creative experiences because you're into like music and, having funny people around, something that you valued then.
100%. Yeah, I definitely didn't appreciate it as much growing up. It's one of those things where I could just look back on it now and think it's so funny.
Yeah.
Like a small example that just popped into my head. Like I remember like one day my mom's upstairs screaming at my sister about something. And I walk downstairs and my stepdad looks at me and goes, geez, right? And he goes, you have a math test you need to study for, right? And I go, no. He goes, tell your mom you have a math test you need to study for. I go, I have a math test I need to study for. And she goes, okay, well, go to Starbucks and study, And he goes, I'm going to go with him and make sure he studies. And then we would just go to a movie or something.
That's nice.
Or go get, like dumb little things like that.
It's kind of funny because you're right. it's the way that you kind of enjoy, like, it's like the movements through life. Because I think that a lot of families, and I've had exposure to a lot of different people in my lifetime, and their families are sometimes just very transactional. Nobody talks at the dinner table, you know, or they're just very serious and critical. And it's like, did you get that done? Did you do that? You know, and so it's like you don't even want to be answering or talking to them, right?
Yeah.
You know, whereas sometimes it's like there's like a finesse to living life, right? Like, I mean, just even like having a conversation with the grocery store clerk that you don't even know, but it's a funny little interaction if you can kind of make them laugh or like, you know, call attention to something kind of like the elephant in the room, that was something weird that just happened or whatever. It's like kind of like a fun way of navigating life. So is that you on a day-to-day basis, do you think?
Yeah, you know, it's kind of it's something I've been thinking about, right? Like, and I noticed that my mood isn't always the same. It was interesting to ask me what my mood is when I walked in here. I noticed that like there's a time for me to do a lot of things, right? And like it's almost like with the seasons in the summertime and in the spring, I'm super outgoing. I'm very like extroverted. I want to talk to everybody, right? And then in the winter, I get like really quiet and like retrospective and like kind of delve inward. And I've always kind of fought against it. Like, oh, I gotta do stand up today. Let me just talk to a bunch of people and get in the mood for this. And now I've started doing, okay, now in the wintertime, I try and write more. I try and figure out like business plans and things like that where I can like be by myself. And in the summertime, I get out, I make movies, I'm around people, I do that kind of thing. So I just kind of move in the cycle like that.
But that takes a certain amount of self-awareness too, because realizing that you are someone that doesn't do that, say, in the winter versus doing it in the summer and wanting to be chatty. Like, I mean, that's pretty cool. And especially because now you're talking about your creativity and the fact that you also are doing your films. So how did that even come into effect? So you're doing comedy, you're writing, but then how did the film portion, because you were in the bands as well, I mean, creative all around. Tell us about this and, you know, we wanna know.
And to your point, you say it takes a certain amount of self-awareness. I think you become self-aware through failing enough times to realize you're hitting a wall, bringing it back to like the theme of failure. It's like, okay, I've tried this so many times and I failed. Clearly, I have to stop swimming upstream, you know? And I think that's really what self-awareness is. It's not so much I understand myself better than other people. I just tried enough things and I realized this doesn't work.
No, and actually, see, I think that is a very, very good way of explaining it. It's like hitting the wall and being aware enough to realize that hitting the wall the same way again and again and again is really not going to work. You know, and so like with your filmmaking, and before we move on to that, because you did bring up an interesting point, and it kind of like draws a parallel to the way that you do comedy, right? Like your comedic style. So when you first started, everybody kind of, you know, like us outside of those examples that you gave, which is amazing, and you know, and like, I mean, rest in peace. You know, that's a hard thing to go through, especially in the comedy community, because I feel like, at least from what I remember, is that there is a lot of sadness and, you know, loneliness. And you think that these people that get on stage that are making people laugh or to have this happy, funny, love, you know, everything is just great in their life because they're funny. But then there's a lot of behind the scenes things. And I mean, even when I was kind of familiar with that scene and I was, you know, doing the open mics and doing shows and stuff like that.
I didn't know you did that.
Maybe I didn't tell you. Yes, I was producing comedy shows.
You told. Oh, that's right. You were a producer. I didn't. But you never told me you did open mics and did shows.
No, it started doing the stand up. So like, you know, it was that's a different story. But but I did do it for some time. My whole thing was getting married super early. You know, like I mean, I would say, was that my trauma? I don't know, but there was something that happened that compelled me to talk about it. And having kids young and like experiencing a life that like most of the people your age are not experiencing. So you know, but it comes from a lot of truth, right? You know, but getting back to what we were talking about is that, so your style is then, you know, like how, when you first started, like, you know, there's a certain amount of the learning curve, right? Where, first of all, what was the worst time you ever bombed, which I'm sure was very early in your career that, you know, might have, or not.
Well, I'll think about it as you keep going. There's a lot of them.
But like, is there something that like shifted where you're like, I've niched down. This is exactly it.
Like I figured it out.
Yeah. Well, not because I feel like we're all in the process of refining, right?
Yes.
You know? But maybe there was an aha moment somewhere.
Yeah. I mean, I think the first aha moment is when you have your first real bit that actually works, outside of like an ancillary thing that you said that got a laugh, like a funny word in your bit, or
Yeah, right.
like
Or
an
an
actual.
expression or something like that. That kind of your timing and whatnot.
Yes, your actual bit that works, I think, is the first aha moment that lets you go, okay, I can do this. And then you ride with that bit for like way too long. And then, like, if you're good, you'll keep writing and get more. And then you'll see some people who have been doing it for way too long and are still doing that first bit. And you're like, move on. You got to move on. Or you're never going to grow.
Yeah.
Worst time I ever bombed. Definitely a lot. I feel like my worst bombs actually have been early on in my career in front of family. Because when you first start, like, people talk about how you're doing it and they want to come see you,
Oh, yeah.
whether it's for good reasons or like bad.
Oh, yeah, because they just want to sometimes just a snooper.
Yeah.
They just want to snoop on you.
And there's so much pressure when you're young and just starting, and you think you're like, there's also a level of, we talked about hitting the wall and failing and realize you can't swim upstream. There's also there needs to be a level of delusion to think, I can do this, and I'm actually good. They just don't know it yet. And then those two things eventually meet, hopefully, and you start moving on a trajectory. But when your family comes and sees you somewhere before that, you're like almost justifying a life choice and a lifestyle. And it's so much pressure, and it's never good. And then, like, maybe your grandparents come, and maybe it was kind of funny, but they don't know what the hell you're talking about. They're just like, what was that, and who is this, and like,
what now?
you know, like, have you ever been to like a concert with an old person, and they're like, and everybody knows these songs, and you're like, yes, everybody knows Sweet Caroline, and it's just like it doesn't translate. You know, those are some of the worst bombs, or it's just the pressure of knowing they're there. That like early on you might get nervous. I definitely did. I remember I had it was one of my first times at Zany's, which is like one of the bigger clubs here in Chicago. And it was Zany's Rosemont in the suburbs. And I put it on like my Instagram, and I think like my grandparents and my parents and like a couple cousins came. And I was like, oh, fuck, no.
I know.
And they were like right in the front. And there might have been like 35 other people there on a Tuesday. And I just fucking bombed so bad. And then I remember my grandpa looking at me and going, well, that was kind of embarrassing.
Oh my God.
And I was like, well, shit, yeah.
No, but it's true though.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's the thing is though. So one of the first times I performed, of course, you know, you start telling people, and then you have people that are, like you said, they're interested because they may not even be happy for you. Because, like, you know, everyone's like, oh, I could be a comedian, you know, whatever.
Everybody
you know?
thinks that,
Exactly.
It's also a little bit of jealousy, too. These people, like, out here snooping, going, well, he's not that good, but I can do it better. But they don't have the balls to actually go do it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. No, I mean, I could definitely. But you're right, though. Like, so the first time I was on stage, I remember a bunch of people that were interested, some of, you know, people, and then my family, right? You know, then people that were happy for me, and it's like, okay, yeah, I invited them to my first show, and then I was like, damn it. So I go up on stage, and I literally, you know, I was changing things to like the last minute, and I went up there, and I kind of like 2 lines in, I like blanked, and I'm like, oh fuck. I'm like, I don't even know. And I just like cut it short, went backstage because like I totally failed. And nobody wanted to make eye contact with me. And I was just like, nobody's going to make me feel better because I was like really shitty, you know? But you learn from that, you know?
You learn from it, and it's actually, those are, I don't even know if they were your friends, but like real friends, real people. Because I think if it's something you want to do, bad people will go, hey, that was great. Don't worry about it. Don't listen to them. But then you'll keep doing it. There needs to be some sort of corrective action. And like as a group of other comedians just being like not making eye contact with you. They were like, hey, next time don't forget what you were doing. Like we're not going to, it's, there comes a time where you move out of the support bubble and into reality, and constructive criticism isn't always nice.
Yeah. And actually, even in business, I have learned that I would rather somebody tell me like it is because I want to improve. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, some people, maybe their delivery isn't that great. It seems kind of condescending, you know, but at the end of the day, you know, I think that it's important to improve. And so, I mean, that's an interesting aspect. So, okay, comedy got, how are you in the filmmaking industry? Like, how does this work, and what kind of films are you making?
Yeah, so I mean, it's just an offshoot of comedy. I mean, every film I've ever made was like a comedy, but I had developed this character. This is only like 3 years ago now, and I was living next to the Music Box Theater at the time. You know, Music Box? Yeah, it's a great like old school from the early 1900s music theater.
Vintage, very cool.
And nothing's changed. Not the seats haven't changed, which is the only complaint I have because they're so fucking uncomfortable. But it's like this early 20th century theater, and they call it the Music Box because they still have like an organ that they would play along with the movies before there was like music in the movies. So they'd have live music, and they still do that sometimes. And they play a bunch of old movies. Enough about the Music Box. But I was living next to the Music Box, and I had this character that I made. His name was Bubba Wilcox III, and I was doing it at like shows and stuff just because I thought it was fun. And he was like a Chicago barbecue expert. The joke being there wasn't really anything called Chicago barbecue, and I would just make up and like go on these rants about like Chicago barbecue, how the Chicago fires when barbecue started, because whenever everything was burning, people didn't know what to do with their meat, so they'd hang up the meat. And I would just go on these crazy rants and have people ask me questions about Chicago. What's your favorite hot dog in Chicago? I'd be like, well, actually, my favorite hot dogs, and I'd make up a location, and I'd be like, you got to get it from a guy named Tony. He lives under the overpass on 35th in Halstead, you know, and he's got a little grill. It's the best thing. You know, I was doing that. I was having a lot of fun with it, and I had booked a rather large show with a headliner. I will not mention their name, but at the Music Box to do comedy because they were trying to do some comedy. So I was like, you know, this guy coming into town, big headliner. He canceled on me, and I still had the space, and I was like, hey, I'd still like to use the space. What are your thoughts on me, like, doing a short film there? And they said, sure. So I went, and I had a friend who I'd shot sketches with and stuff, and he filmed it. I wrote a script, got it all together, and I made this, like, 15-minute short film. Played it at the Music Box, and everybody I had in it was a comic, too. So then after the show, we did, like, each 7-8 minutes of comedy, and then I did like a Q&A at the end as the character, and it ended up going really well, and I was like, this is fun.
Okay.
And I entered it into film festivals, and I actually got into a couple. I think I like won one small one with this film, but it was enough for me to go, okay, like I feel like I'm not swimming upstream with this, and I enjoy it. Let me keep making more. And now I've made, I don't even know how many, maybe like 11 or 12.
Wow.
But
And this is the same character?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, I moved on to new characters. So my idea was I wanted to do these mockumentaries, fake documentaries.
Okay.
And like just have them all be Chicago based. So I did like 5 or 6 of those, and then I started doing other stuff, and you know, I just get an idea, write a script, and then just make it happen. And they're all short films. Like they're not like, I'm not making feature films, but like.
But you know what? In this day and age where everybody's like immediate gratification.
The attention span, man, it's too short.
Yeah. In fact, there's a guy that I was talking to. He's like a playwright, right?
Yeah.
And the plays are very an hour intermission, ... They're long, right?
Oh, yeah.
And now they've realized that people don't have the attention. Exactly.
I sure don't.
That's exactly it. So what they've done now is they've shortened it.
Yeah.
They've had to because they know that people just can't fucking pay attention anymore.
Yeah.
And it's like, so, I mean, it's interesting. So actually, I do like short films. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, so they're like 15, 20 minutes long, and sometimes the longest one I did was like 30. And I started making them, and I entered them into the film festival circuit. And like you said, some of them, I got into Cannes for one. I've been into the Sydney International, London International, Austin, a bunch of others. I'm going to make a short film, a feature film this year, because I'd really like to be in Sundance or Tribeca.
Yeah.
So I'm going to shoot my shot at that. But yeah, so that just kind of started, and I've just, you know, and then it ebbs and flows. You know, I have a lot of things that I'm doing. My main thing is stand-up. Obviously, I'm on the road all the time. But sometimes you come home and you're like, all right, I got 3 weeks off, and you feel like you need it. But for me, after like 3 hours of like sitting on the couch and being like, oh, I'm relaxed. I'm like, all right, let's get back to work. And I got to do something. So I go, okay, let me do this or let me do that. And I'll just put new things in there.
Yeah. Would you say that you actually like feeling uncomfortable?
I've gotten used to it enough where I think it's become a comfortable place for me now.
Interesting. Yeah. No, I like that. All right. So these are those really creative. You're a creative individual. Was there a time ever where you were non-creative, and maybe have had to work jobs that are like basically what is like the worst job you've ever had?
Oh man, I've been fired so many times.
Okay. Failure.
Yeah, back to failure.
Yeah.
You know, when you say non-creative, I don't know if I was ever non-creative. I think if I was, I probably wouldn't have gotten fired.
Right,
Creative
right.
differences as the
Exactly.
barista. But yeah, I was very actually shy as a kid, like super shy, like around friends, around family, like all through like most of high school. I was very quiet. I observed a lot. I was very like introspective and definitely an introvert. And then when I first moved off on my own, I I think it just wasn't working. Like I didn't have the life I wanted being like this. Like I was bored, but quiet and shy and too nervous to go talk to people. So I definitely had to make a very profound change in my life where I would force myself to have conversations with people in the street. I would force myself to like start talking to people. And I lived when I first moved off on my own, I lived in St. Paul, Minnesota, in a bad neighborhood. And I would just start talking to people. And you know, you're really young, you're 18. So you're like, I was talking to all the homeless people that like sat in the plaza. I became really good friends with this pimp named Bobby Buttermilk, which great pimp name. I feel like I need to make a movie called Bobby Buttermilk.
Okay.
But I
that's
became
a good
great
one.
friends with Bobby Buttermilk. And he would always, we'd talk and he'd teach me about pimping, I guess. And I was like 18 going, this is maybe life advice. I don't know. And he'd invite me over and he'd give me a big bag of weed. He'd go, you roll joints, I'll talk. And he'd play old jazz records and teach me about jazz. And, you know, he was obviously, there were no life lessons in there, at least not for me.
Right. But
Pimping wasn't in the cards for me.
But hold on. But can I ask you though, because
Yeah.
you know, having that
Yeah.
one personally, like, what did they dress like?
Oh my God, Bobby Buttermilk was a cool dresser.
Typical pimp
So
mode, or like?
Bobby was like he was about 5'5". He had a very thin mustache right here. He had one gold tooth, and he would wear these like very like loud shirts, like not like a Hawaiian shirt, but like just like a very loud like button-down shirt.
Okay.
And he would ride around on, you know, like those Schwinn bikes that have the big handlebars out here.
Yeah.
On one of those all through the neighborhood, and this is before the days
On a
of,
bike? Why?
he wasn't a very good pimp. You know, he wasn't a very lucrative pimp. But he would ride around on this bike blasting music out of a little a boombox. This is like boombox days.
Okay.
And he'd smoke a cigarette. He'd play harmonica. And he was just always around. And the craziest thing about him was there was always a girl coming around the corner of the plaza as one was leaving. And I just remember, like, me and my friends would watch me, like, the timing here is impeccable.
Yeah.
Because they never would see each other.
Okay.
I was too young to really understand what was happening or what he was doing.
At 18.
At 18, we would just, like, well, I mean, we knew what he was doing, but, like, you know, you were like, just what's going on with Bobby, man? Like, yeah, he invited me over to his house yesterday. He told me all this stuff, and like all these girls came over. You know, it was just like that was Bobby. Now that I'm older, I'm like, what the fuck was I doing hanging out with a pimp at 18, smoking weed, as he's doing coke, watching Gangland on TV, talking to me about pimping, you know?
Exactly. Do you think he was trying to get you to work for him, or like?
No, he was actually like he really liked us because we were all musicians.
Oh, okay.
And he played saxophone, and he really was trying to, like, when we would hang out, really trying to teach me about old records he loved.
Okay.
So that was the majority of our conversations.
I see.
He taught me about Stan Getz, Joe Beam, a lot of like bossa nova, a lot of great sax players, jazz guitarist, Barney Kessel. You know, he taught me about a bunch of like old school jazz I never would have even gotten my hands on.
Yeah.
And it was more so like, hey, like he would come, my band would play downstairs at the bar. And he would come all the time and listen. He'd be like, hey, I liked what that guitar solo you did. I want you to listen to this. And he'd give me a record and I'd take it home. And that was more our relationship.
Yeah.
I think it's just funny that he was a pimp
Yeah,
and all
yeah.
that was happening. So
To
more so painting a picture
Yes.
of who this was.
Right, exactly. Well, I do like that visual.
Yeah.
I learned a lot, especially like the thin mustache that you described so well, and the loud shirts.
Wish I had a picture of him.
Though the collar size, I'm wondering, was it a longer, kind of like a pointier collar I'm envisioning? Was he wearing hats or?
You know, he would sometimes wear like a fabric like Kanga cap.
Okay.
But usually no hat. And I don't remember the collar size. It was It was always unbuttoned. If
Oh,
that
I
helps.
see.
Yeah.
So like third button, unbutton, or like
The whole thing.
Oh, I
the
see.
whole thing. And he was not in shape.
That's okay. Yeah, but okay. So my experience with a pimp, I
Yeah.
will say, not that I've had any, but I did move to St. Louis for a bit, and I lived in a transitional kind of space where the neighborhood was up and coming, right? So, I had to kind of stay in this like kind of apartment hotel type of place before we moved to our other, and I had 2 little kids at the time, right?
Okay.
So the park that was behind the this place that we were renting was like a ghetto park, right? Like you would see a lot of homeless people, but my kids were like 2 and 3 and they wanted to go to the park, right? And so I remember one day I took them to the park and a guy that was a pimp showed up with 2 of these ladies that he was with and their children. And they were all hanging out at the park. And it was really sweet, the conversation that I had with him, because he was so respectful.
Yeah.
He was so respectful. He was like, "Hi, how are you doing?" Like, he was just really, like, really nice. So I would say I've not had bad experiences with pimps. How about you?
Hey, pimps are people too. I haven't. I do know some who have. It was funny. I was doing
Yes, you
my
do.
podcast talking to Cortez Smith, who's on The Chi.
Okay.
And he plays Nuck on The Chi. And we were just talking about his childhood. And I started talking about Bobby Buttermilk. He's like, "Oh, my God, you ever know Don Juan on the West Side?" And I was like, "Oh, I've heard a lot about Don Juan, who's like an actual pimp on the West Side."
You know about him?
You know Don Juan too? Yeah. And just like, I mean, the more you learn, like, a lot of these people are like fun and flashy on the outside. And then you learn more about them. You're like, "Oh, you're a terrible person." And I'm not saying Don Juan is. I don't know Don Juan. I just know him through other people and stories and stuff. But, like you said, pimps are people too. Like, hey, maybe he's got a family, maybe he doesn't, but doesn't mean he's a good guy,
Yeah.
But your interaction with him was nice.
Yeah, right? I mean, he was respectful.
Yeah.
I don't know what working with him is like, so I feel like but getting back to work, right?
Yeah.
Talking about your
Oh,
worst
sorry.
job.
Yeah, I got distracted
No, that's
with
good.
talking about pimping again. So I would have. So I was in these bands mostly, and
Yeah.
I would pick up like these odd jobs because I was barely making any money. Mostly I got fed and paid in drinks, which is cool when you're like 18, 19, 20 and you can't drink legally. I got fired from Chipotle in 3 days.
Okay.
For stealing burritos.
Oh yeah. Well, aren't you allowed to eat the burritos?
Yeah, well, I was allowed 1 company burrito a day,
Oh, okay.
and I was just bagging up burritos and selling them to my friends,
Okay.
and for like half price.
Subletting, basically.
Yeah, and then subletting, good word. And then they fired me from there. My favorite job ever was I worked at a Nepali restaurant because I had lived in Nepal for years.
Oh.
Not years, like almost a year.
Okay.
Like 8 months maybe. And I lived in Nepal and I came back and it was right after the housing market crash in like 2008, 2009. Maybe a little bit after that, but the economy was horrible. And I remember like walking down the streets of I was in Minneapolis at the time. Walking down the streets of Minneapolis, it was the dead of winter. We were calling it the not snowpocalypse, like the Arctic something. There was a
Polar
name
vortex.
for it. Polar vortex.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It was the polar vortex, and I just remember like going into all these places. I never thought I would end up working because you never think you're going to be the front desk clerk at a UPS store.
Yeah, yeah.
And going into all these places, grocery stores, Goodwill to be like the cashier, like anything, and getting rejected from everything.
Yeah.
Sitting there filling out the stupid application by hand for like 30 minutes, handing it in. You know the guy's just going to throw it out right after. And I remember I had taken the bus there, and I'm walking like trying to get to this next place. And the wind hits so hard, my jacket rips open, and the zipper broke. And I just remember laughing. I was like, this is like, I wasn't upset. I was just like, this is so crazy. And I started laughing like crazy. And I finally was like, okay, let me strategize because nobody's giving me a job. I've tried literally everything. And I was like, okay, I just got back from Nepal. I could speak Nepali. I know about the culture a little bit. Let me go work in a Nepali restaurant. First one I go to, they're like, no, we don't hire white people. We don't hire non-Nepalis. And I go, okay. Second one I go to, we'll get back to you. We're not hiring right now. Third one I go to, this guy, Ujwal. Still talk to him to this day. Love Ujwal Adhikari. I told him, and he goes, okay. And he goes, "You speak Nepali?" And I started speaking to him Nepali a little bit. He goes, "I love the way you speak Nepali," because it was so bad, but he could understand what I was saying.
Yeah.
That he goes, "Okay, you're interesting. Come Tuesday, and we'll see what we got for you."
Interesting.
I worked there for maybe a year. It was the best job ever. The food was great. We do a lunch buffet every day, and he'd let me take home the whole lunch buffet in like a take-home container, so I didn't have to buy groceries.
That's awesome.
He had me as a waiter. I was a dishwasher. I also started doing prep cooking, learned how to cook some of the meals. And he was just a fun guy, a little too fun. We would just drink all day at work, and then half the time I wouldn't even go home because there was an outside couch I'd end up crashing on because we would just be drinking and like, call your friend, see if he's got some weed to come over, and we're just cooking all night, partying. It was just like a really fun time in my life.
Yeah.
Couldn't do it now, but like at that age, you're just drunk all the time, and you're like, yeah, you're supposed to be tired and feel like this all the time, you know? And I worked that job for a while. And then I got enough experience from him where I was like, okay, I'm going to go try and be a chef. So I went to a restaurant, and I did terribly because it was more
Line cook proper. Yeah.
regimented.
Yeah.
You have to be here at this time. You get like a strike if you're late. You got to start as a prep cook for like a year, and I hated that shit. I hated like cutting onions and like lettuce and all that. I just want to like make the food. I was trying to skip steps, and yeah, they fired me. They were like, "We don't think it's working out." And I was like, "Why?" And they were like, "Well, you've ruined like $500 worth of food in the last week."
Oh my gosh. Well, first off, there's two questions I have about your
Yeah.
Nepali job. Number one, how did you find that many Nepali restaurants in one city? Because I don't think I've ever been to a Nepali restaurant.
So strangely enough, Minneapolis, St. Paul, or just Minnesota, I guess like we call it Chicagoland, the greater Minneapolis area, is one of the largest, just outside of New York, Tibetan and Nepali populations.
Wow.
And there was a handful of them. We actually have quite a few here in Chicago.
Okay.
You just don't think of them. A lot of people just assume they're Indian restaurants.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's quite a few here too. But yeah, big population there.
Interesting. So Devon would have a Nepali restaurant, you think?
Ton of them.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I have to. What's your favorite meal?
Nepali meal. So they don't really have it on a lot of menus here, but what we would eat every day there was called dal bhat,
Oh.
which is just like a vegetable, like their national vegetable is called gundruk. I don't know what it is in English, but it was very good. It's like some sort of cabbage or spinach maybe.
Okay.
Rice, dal, which is like that lentil liquid that you pour on top of everything. And if you're lucky, you get like a little meat with it, like chicken, water buffalo, or goat or something.
Okay.
And you just kind of like take the rice with the vegetable and the meat. And
You've
you
eaten
eat.
with your hands,
Yeah.
huh?
Well, when you're there, you do. Well, you can't order it here, but the best thing you could get here is probably you can if you like know the family, I
Yeah,
guess.
yeah.
The best thing you could get here is probably momos, which are Nepali dumplings.
Okay, well, that's good to know.
Yeah.
All right, second question about Nepal. Don't you have to have like a visa to go to Nepal, like a proper, like they have like a certain quota of the amount of people that they let in, right? Or is that Tibet?
I think you maybe think of, I mean, you need a visa to go anywhere pretty much, but like their visa
Like a cap they have.
is pretty laxed.
Oh.
Tibet, you can't really enter.
Oh, yes, that's when that I'm getting confused.
I did like a hike with a family I met out there. Not a hike. We went to like their village, and it was right on the border of Tibet, which they'll tell you it's China there. And there was this red line over a bridge that you couldn't step over, and it's on the other side. It just looks desolate and gray, and there's a bunch of armed guards on the other side of the bridge, standing there, being like, "Don't cross the red line." I took a picture of it. They threw my camera off the bridge into the water, and this was like before like. I guess they had iPhones, but like I didn't have one, and it was just like an old digital camera.
Yeah.
They threw it off the bridge, and I was with my friend Kim, who like I guess was very anti-authority, and she kept trying to like toe the line and being like, "Ooh, look at me," and I was like, "Kim, you're gonna
please
get a
don't
shot."
do that.
Yeah.
Please don't do that. Oh my
But
god.
yeah, Tibet's hard to get into because I think it's like been taken over by China. I don't know the full story, but a lot of Tibetans now live in New York and India for sure, and then New York and Minneapolis.
Interesting. Okay. Interesting. All right. So failure. Last words on failure in terms of jobs.
The best thing you could do is fail upwards.
Huh.
Yeah.
Elaborate.
You get laid off, you get fired from something. Don't tell anybody. Pretend you still have the job and try and segue that into a better, higher paying job.
Aha. Okay.
And you know what? That works more often than being unemployed and going to look for a job.
Okay.
So what I'm saying is lie.
Okay, lie
Yeah.
to your future employer that you currently have a position.
There's different levels to it. Like, I wouldn't lie to Ujwal, you know?
Right.
But if I'm going to work for like a massive corporation,
Mm-hmm. They don't care.
yeah, you get in, you get the job, then you prove yourself. I mean, 90% of people who get things in this world, I've realized, just figure out how to take it, and then they have to show their worth at that point. But you know, it's like it's about getting your foot in the door, and then delivering, and then going, well, yeah, but look where we are now.
This is true. This is true. Okay, well, thank you for your insights. I think that the
Kids
next
lie.
Not exactly lie. Next topic I'd love to discuss. I'd love to know about your dating life,
Okay.
your experience in terms of failure when it comes to like, I mean, at least for me, I haven't been on the dating apps. The culture is very different right now in terms of dating on these apps and whatnot, and how people are meeting online 100% of the time. Not so much, and then there's like a hookup culture, and so what is your dating, kind of method of choice? Is there something that experiences that you've had?
So I've also never had a dating app.
Okay.
I've also not dated very much. I did when I was younger, but I wouldn't call those dates. Like when I look back now, like I would not consider those dates, just more so like hanging out. Like I feel like a date is when you like go out, go to dinner or something. I was not doing that when I was like 19, 20, 21, 22. I was just like, hey, come to my show, like that kind of thing. I was actually, I'm divorced. So I was married for, I was in a relationship and ended up getting married for like 10 years from like 22 to like 31, 32.
Wow.
So I didn't have an opportunity to really
So
date.
22 to what?
When I was 22 years old, we started dating. I didn't get
wow.
married.
Oh,
We started
okay.
dating.
Okay.
I later got married, and then we ended up getting divorced around like 31, 32. So I never really had the opportunity to like go date.
Right.
Never had the opportunity to like download dating apps, and like I have a girlfriend now, so I haven't like been dating a lot. I don't think I almost look at it like I don't feel like I've ever really like casually dated.
Right. I'm glad that you're not dating right now because you have a girlfriend.
Yeah. No, but I mean, like even like in like the moments I was in between, I've always met people in real life. I've never met anybody on the internet. I just think that goes along with like my personality and what I like to do. And I used to be very afraid of it, but I have no problem like talking to people or approaching people in public. And just never really had a phase of casual dating.
Okay, so that's interesting. So, that kind of puts things in. I did not know that you, are not on the apps. I typically people that everyone is, and has experienced it to some degree.
I have not.
And
which I am happy for.
Yes,
yeah,
because there's a lot, and I'm sure that you hear quite a bit when it comes to all of the weirdness when it comes to dating, like where you might get excited about somebody, but they're not on the same page as you. So you show up and then maybe they don't. And, I can see that being, and actually kind of cultivating a culture of like that flakiness, and then people putting their guard up because they have been hurt. And so it's, do you advise being on the apps or just really trying to search for people organically? And how did you meet these individuals that, you have had relations with? Relationships.
I did not have sexual relations with that woman. I think it works for some people. I have friends and I know people, and like, I do like the whole crowd work thing that shows you guys dating, how'd you guys meet? A lot of people meet on Tinder, and I find out that they've been dating for 3 years, or Tinder's probably dating myself, but like, what do they say now? They say Hinge or Bumble or something. I don't know. It's always changing.
Right.
Fun fact, I actually learned all these companies are owned by the Match Group,
Okay.
you may have heard of Match.com, actually owns Tinder, Hinge, Bumble. They actually own all of them.
I see.
And they compete them against each other. And the idea is you exhaust people on Tinder to move them over to another app, to move them over to another app. And the idea actually isn't to get get them off the app and have a sexual successful relationship. The idea is to move them to another app and always be on the apps and looking.
Right.
And you kind of see how the algorithm plays in there, and you see how it is a business and they want you on their device and their app. So I do think the game is rigged.
Right.
From that standpoint, if you look at the business model behind how these work and how they would make money.
So you're saying that if somebody started with Tinder, right? Hookup Central, then they're like, oh, I'm jaded. I hate this. I'm deleting my Tinder. And now I'm going to go to Bumble because I want a real relationship and I want to talk to real people. Is that how it is? And then eventually they're like, well, I don't really like that. I want friendship. And then they move on to the next one.
I think potentially. I also think it's a lot of people deleting and re-downloading the app going, this is crazy. I need out of this. This is toxic. Delete. 3 weeks goes by. They might go, it's Saturday. I'm not doing anything. Let me see who's on Tinder, And I think it's this more, like we were talking about earlier, attention span. The ability to swipe on 300 people in 10 minutes and decide, yes, I want to date you, or no. And it's not always dating. Yes, I want to sleep with you. No, I don't want to sleep with you.
Right.
Or date, or whatever version of that is so not a normal experience we should be having as humans. And it makes it, like you said, very transactional.
Oh, 100%. But then you have also times where you have people that are like catfishing you on that. They're not even like real.
Yeah.
Yet you have the bandwidth to go and get all of these like fake, like for example, I know somebody that was catfished, right? Like she was
She was catfish, or she was the catfish?
She was, and I wouldn't be surprised if she was the catfish either. But
I would just imagine the people who are doing it are so lonely and have such a low self-esteem that they feel like in order to get whatever they need out of it, whether it's this delusion of thinking, maybe I will be with this person someday, maybe I'll sleep with this person, or maybe I just need somebody to talk to. In order to get that, they have to change something significantly about themselves and pretend to be something else. That, and I would also imagine like a lot of these are coming out of like server farms in like Russia and North Korea, where they're like, oh yeah, you're the love of my life, yeah, blah, blah, blah. I can't meet, but like if you could send me money, I can get on a plane. I imagine there's got to be a lot of that.
Right, yeah.
I do think we'll be in a bad place if we lose human-to-human interaction.
Yeah.
Kind of like what you were saying earlier. You have a moment with the cashier, like not that many cashiers left. There is becoming less and less real human interaction in our lives. Obviously, you can get it if you want to. You can go to a bar, you can go do that. But a lot of people are so socially afraid, I think.
Oh, yeah.
Some people don't leave their house. Some people don't want to. Some people won't go to a bar by themselves or go walk somewhere by themselves. Like there needs to be human interaction for us to have empathy for each other at the end of the day. Otherwise, you're just behind a screen all day, and the thing or the person on the other side never really becomes real.
Right. Oh, yeah. And I think also it's like in that younger generation, you're seeing kids that have no social skills.
Yeah, it's going to be a problem one day.
It is going to be a massive problem. I mean, I wonder if they'll realize that it is.
And that's the problem with the dating, too, like you were talking about on the apps, right? Like, it has become, like, faux pas or, like, inappropriate to talk to somebody in real life. Like, I don't know how true this is, but, like, you watch shows and stuff, and they're like, ew, don't talk to me in real life. Like, message me, oh, that, or the new thing now is to be like, oh, I'm so overstimulated. Like, that's too much for me.
Yeah.
It's like to have a conversation.
Right.
And I think that's kind of where the apps come into play, and it's becoming the new norm. And that's why I don't want to go down that route. I would think it's always better to meet people in person or have like a real connection with them. But I'm different, right? Like, I'm out a lot. I talk to people all the time. That's kind of what I do. And I feel like I'm fortunate about is I have a lot. You go to school, you go to college, then you go to work. And outside of school and college, I guess college is school, outside of school, you lose that like really big gathering of people you're around where you have this community. You could talk to people, a lot of people you don't know. You could ask this person out like, hey, like this is a friend of a friend of a friend. Like if you just go to a job and you work remotely, you don't get any of that. I'm fortunate like to be in like a comedy community and be going to different cities
Right.
and having
Engaging
events
with people.
where I can meet people and have that.
Right.
And I realize a lot of people don't. And I think finding some sort of community is important.
Right. And it being in solitude also kind of reinforces that solitude. And then they think that this is the way to be, but then you can't come out and actually. So yes, it is fearful. I'm fearful for this upcoming generation because
too.
it's sadness. They're
Yeah.
lonely, you know. And then speaking of these like ChatGPT prompts, there was one that I saw where it was like, you know, if I was the devil, you know, and I wanted to screw over the next generation, how would you do it, ChatGPT? And it says basically I would, you know,
Yeah.
give them a device
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
and make
I've
them
seen
lose
that,
their
yeah.
identity, And it's kind of funny. It's like you're self-prophesizing. Like,
Yes.
this thing that we're all kind of, you know.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was saying earlier. I think the design of the app and how they make money is to keep more people on the app. If everybody went on the app and then had a successful relationship after, it would be a one-way avenue, which isn't a good business market. They won't repeat business. So I think people need to either see through that and understand what they're doing. Also, I think the one thing that does give me hope too is people are simpler than I think we give them credit for.
Right.
So like, while we're talking about all this negative stuff with dating, there will always be 18 to 22-year-old guys who just want to get laid and will go out there and will go to Florida and sit in Fort Lauderdale in large crowds of people and do dumb shit, you know, and there will always be like, I guess I can only speak from it from a male perspective, but that'll always exist, right?
Yeah.
There will always be a group of 30-year-old guys who are out trying to finance bro each other, being like, oh, let's go out here and let me throw my card down. No, let me throw my card down. Let's go talk to those girls. There will always be that.
Unless they're robots. Have you seen that movie with Megan Fox? Like what?
Oh, that was
what's
such a bad
happening?
movie. I hated
What
that
is that?
movie.
Did you watch it because of Megan Fox?
No, I watched it because my girlfriend wanted to watch it.
Okay.
And the whole time I was going, this is the dumbest shit I ever have seen. And the one where Megan Fox is like the killer robot and tries to kill everybody
because
because
she's obsessed with the guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is, I mean, the movie served its purpose.
Right.
But I don't think there's any remnants of reality or like somebody trying to prepare us for a future that might be
Right.
in that outside of, maybe a robot could get like hacked and something could happen. Do I think there's going to be a bunch of killer Megan Foxes going through the streets in bikinis with knives? No.
No.
But, I don't know the future.
All right. Okay. All right. So we'll move on from that, but let's go back, get into texting. Because
Okay.
I watched this, actually, no, Aziz Ansari wrote this book on dating. I don't know if you read it. Well, it was
You
a while
did that
ago.
backwards because normally I read this thing and realized I saw like a TikTok.
Oh, okay.
But you said I watched this thing and then you realized you read a book. That's good.
Yeah. Well, I mean, do you consider listening to a book, reading a book?
No, but I think it's a pretty close cousin.
I think so.
Yeah.
I mean, you're using your eyes all the time.
Yeah.
And you did listen to the book. So it's technically just turning over into your brain. So you
Yeah, I guess for me, I retain it better if I read it than listen
Right.
to it.
Okay.
But I mean, that's just me.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. So let's talk about language. So
Yeah.
basically, he said that there's like a game when it comes to relationships and texting, right?
Okay.
The less words you write, you win the texting game.
Sure.
Right. The person who texts last loses, like, is there like a certain, what do you think about dating and texting? I mean, at least from, I know that you've been in a relationship for a long time, but just generally speaking, at least, you're around comedians who are, probably talking about relationships and the way that they're dealing with women and meeting them or men or whatnot. Like, let's talk about what your rules to dating are. I mean, texting are.
Sure. I think there is a time and place for what Aziz Ansari is talking about. And I think it's called high school into college and maybe shortly after. But people need to grow up and stop playing games.
Okay.
And I think if you're going to play games with people like that, you should only expect to have games played with you. And you're not going to ever find a relationship that's healthy or meaningful unless you're willing to move beyond that.
Right.
I mean, don't be... There's parameters to it. Don't be weird. Don't text crazy things or text nonstop. But the idea that I have to text less and the last person to text has the power in the relationship is insane. Because the only way that works is if both people buy into that mentality. If you buy into the mentality of, hey, I'm just trying to communicate and I don't want to play games, but like I'd really love to go to dinner, I think you could move well beyond this this power game that we're discussing.
Yeah. And I think that perhaps maybe, again, it's perpetuated by these apps that are like, people are getting ghosted and and it's nothing like that is kind of like substantial that is helpful to these people. So basically they have to resort to these kinds of games. But like you're absolutely right. This is going to just bring on more of it. So yeah.
You get what you give. And if you're giving out the energy of I'm here to play games, and I'm trying to have some sort of power dynamic here in terms of how we're going to continue forward in this relationship, you're going to get that energy.
Yeah.
If you give out the energy of, hey, I actually really like you, I'd like to hang out and see where this goes, I think you're going to find people with that energy.
Yeah.
Because the person who wants to play games doesn't want to do that.
Right.
And then they will ghost you probably. But then you'll no doubt find somebody who is not playing games either. And then you could have a shot at something.
Okay. All right. I like that. All right. When it comes to texting, and this is not relationship related, because now we've just moved on to texting in general. When you say, I'm on my way, what is the right amount of time, do you think? Like, can you break that down? Like, what's lying? Like, an hour out is not on your way. So what's actually on your way?
I am really bad at this. I'm trying to be more punctual.
Okay.
On my way means people are stressing me out about getting somewhere.
Okay.
And I'm probably still in my house.
Okay.
And I won't say on my way. I'll say I'm 5 minutes out.
Okay.
And then I probably won't get there for another hour.
Okay.
Because you just chill out. You don't need me there. Or maybe you do, and then my bad. But I'm pretty bad at that.
I would say you're pretty punctual, though. I mean,
okay, for like this.
Yeah.
This I'm punctual for.
Yeah.
A show I'm very punctual for.
Yeah.
For a movie shoot I'm very punctual for.
Right.
My podcast. If I'm meeting friends at a bar for dinner, now that's where that comes in.
Okay, so you're saying that then what is considered okay for you to get an I'm on my way message? Do you want that? Do you interpret that to be like, oh fuck, this guy hasn't even left? Like,
I know the people I hang out well enough to be like, I'm on my way. Yeah, we'll see him in a fucking hour. Yeah, I'm not waiting around here for him. Just let's go to the next place and tell him to meet us there. You know, like I know those people. Granted, if you're hanging out with new people, I think you have to give them the consideration of letting them know or being somewhat in the realm of on time. This is how I behave with my friends and family, not with like
somebody new that is impressionable that may not continue. Like, that's
correct.
The first metric.
You have to give a false representation of who you are as a person. I'm punctual, I'm on time, and then you could let them know who you really are and be 35 minutes late.
So how many days, at what point?
Does that sink in?
At what point do you say that? Like, yeah, okay, so if the false representation, you're lying initially, right? But when do you finesse them into being like, hey, I'm actually late all the time, so this is who I am now?
I think once you connect on a level beyond just acquaintances, once you start to become friends, you can do that.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. What do you think about red receipts? Yes, no?
I leave them on only because my phone just came that way, and I've never even looked into turning them off.
Okay. Does it bother you when someone gets? Oh, you saw it.
I know nobody's ever done that to me.
Okay, well that's good. Yeah. I like
and
that.
I would tell them to shut up if they did. Yeah, I'm busy. But I get an occasional like on Instagram because Instagram has red receipts.
Yeah.
The scene.
Yeah.
From like people who I don't know who are like, hey, I'd love to be on the podcast, or like, hey, like I'd love to come to a show, or hey, could I be in a movie? You know, like weird stuff from people I don't know.
Yeah.
And then I'll see it, and then I'll just be like, I'm not responding to this. I don't know who this person is. And it's a scary world out there. I've had some weird people interact with me that like. We're actually scary people that I'm like, I gotta block these people on multiple levels.
Yeah.
But like they might be like, hey, I saw you saw this.
Yeah.
And then my answer is driving, and then I'll block you.
Yeah.
So I don't even deal with that.
But you can actually change that. That's been very liberating, just in general for anyone who does it.
Yeah, I know I can change it, but like I don't care. It's almost like a just kind of like a barometer for me where if somebody says, I saw you saw that and I don't know
Then
who
it's like,
you are,
then it's like, okay.
then good. I'm glad you said that. Now I know to block you.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. Okay, good. That's and I like that. It seems very true to yourself, and that's a
Sure.
good way to be because I think that sometimes people don't have the boundaries where it's like, oh my God, like So, but when you deal with enough people that have done enough things,
Yeah.
you're like, you know what? Black and white. I can't do that anymore.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Interesting. Okay, so what do you think about emojis?
Emojis.
Are you an emoji user or are you a non-emoji user?
Non-emoji user.
Do you think most men are non-emoji users?
Yeah, I think so.
Why?
It's just, I don't know if there's a reason.
Mm-hmm.
It has never once crossed my mind to go look for an emoji that represents what I want to have in this text.
I see.
And I also don't think I text like that. Like I don't text like, hey, what's up? What are you doing? Let's talk.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's to go do something or to
Okay.
make plans or to
Are you a
figure
voice
something
texter?
out. No,
Okay.
I don't like the voice text.
Why?
The voice text meaning like the transcribe, or
Well,
I'm going to
yeah,
send a
yeah,
voice
yeah.
memo to you.
I mean, I don't like sometimes hearing my own voice, so I will just transcribe it.
No, I just type it out. I'm also not writing things that are that long
Mm-hmm.
to the point where I think I need to voice text. Also, it always comes out wrong.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I think girls are, very emoji centric. I mean,
Yeah.
can you postulate why you think that might be the case?
Can I postulate why? That's a good word. No, not to just not have an answer. I don't know why.
Okay.
I don't pretend to understand women and why they might want to have
Mm-hmm.
emojis or anything to that effect. So I just no, I don't know.
So I had a male mentor in my business
Okay.
that for me when I would write emails, I would use exclamation points.
Oh, yeah.
And he was like, "Listen, tone it down because
Yeah.
you need to seem more, what you are, right?
Yeah.
And I think I'm just nice, so it's
Yeah.
like, oh hey, how blah blah blah. But the thing is, I think perhaps in business, so he told me he's like, listen, tone it down. So anytime you have an email and you have a few exclamation points, like take out like 3,
Yeah.
So I mean, so that's one thing. But I think that the reason why an emoji would be a good kind of, because I've had situations where I've had an email and there is kind of like a subtext under that is missing.
You put emojis in your emails?
No, I
Oh,
don't.
okay.
I don't. The occasional smiley face with a semicolon and parentheses will be for somebody I know.
Sure. Okay.
If that was, maybe I said something mean, so I want to offset it with a little bit of a,
Got it.
So,
Yeah.
but in a text, I
Yeah.
think that if you're talking to somebody, sometimes if it's like a quick one, I don't want to seem like a jerk, so then I'll just put a smiley face at the end of it, even though I was actually being mean.
Yeah.
So I think that
Do you think
maybe.
that has to do more with you not wanting to come off as being mean?
You know what? I think that's a good point. Yes. I mean, the thing is, though, I think that sometimes you have to have certain kinds of interactions and sustain them with certain individuals, right? So if you're in a long-term like work scenario, I think
Sure.
a lot of people, they say being in corporate America is like finishing school for manners. They say that.
Oh.
I mean, I've heard that. And I can see why that might be the case because there's a certain amount of thinking 10 steps ahead because you still have to deal with that person and not saying the wrong thing because you know that it will be an awkward interaction if you say like something, just a little, like it's very easy to offend people later in life to some degree if you're not saying like your execution is not meeting or it just rubs them the wrong way. So a lot of times like you can think 5 steps ahead and be like, listen, I'd rather just not even go down that path. So let's just make sure that we kind of nip this in the bud right here. So moving down the road, you won't have to deal with it,
Yeah.
So, but in general, I think that women are like to kind of like add that dimension of emotion, right? Like, oh,
Yeah.
I'm happy with you. So smile.
That's a very good point. I agree.
Or, or like a laughing thing. Or if you're texting a cute girl, I mean, I noticed that you get more emojis when, texting a guy that likes you, then you just get more emojis. So
When you're saying the guy will send you emojis if he likes you, or the other way around?
I have seen that.
Oh, really? Okay,
Yeah.
interesting.
I don't know.
I don't know. I've never texted a man in
Okay.
that way. And I also just don't use emojis, so I don't know. But I mean, I guess like I do the thumbs up sometimes.
Yeah.
I'll do the reactions.
I see.
Not emojis. Like if I'm going, I get this and I don't really want to respond, I'll give one of these or something like that.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And now, what about ChatGPT and writing emails? One that came from that, or a text message that might have been a difficult one to draft. Do you think that's authentic? Are we heading down the wrong road? Are we set up for failure with our lack of intelligence now that we have to use?
Love Apple AI and Google Gemini.
Okay.
Because for me, I just have pretty poor grammar. And like when I structure an email, it goes, do you want me to make this better? And then it does. I'm like, oh my God, yes, this is so much nicer. Because I'm just like off the cuff, like saying how I feel and like what I need. Like I'm trying to build a pergola at my house right now,
The DIY.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I was talking to a company who like sells the pergolas, and I was like, "Hey, what is the wind resistance rating? How much snow can it take? How long does it take to build? What's it made out of?" I'm asking all these questions, and then Google whatever is like, "Would you like us to make this more elegant and professional?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And it's like, "Hi, how are you doing today? Hope this day finds you well." Blah blah blah. And I'm like, "Yeah, this is great. Send it to them."
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. But as a writer, because
Yeah.
you're a writer too, is that your voice?
My emails are not a voice for me.
Okay.
If I'm writing a script or a joke, no, never. But I had ChatGPT make my bio because I had this long bio, and then I was like, shorten it and make it more entertaining. And then it did. I edited that, and like that I'm fine with. I will never use it on a script or like on a joke or anything like that. That's the creative process that I would never touch with somebody else's brain or a robot brain.
Right.
But an email, I could care less.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, what about we don't want to go down that path, but like, I'll
Let's
ask
do
it
it.
anyway.
Yeah.
Well, what about like kind of like creating topics on ChatGPT for like material?
I'll show you.
There might be like a AI agent that does comedy.
No, and we're far off from
They're
that. And
really
I think we'll
not
never
funny.
be there. And I'll
Yeah.
show you why. And I'll show you why nobody should do this. Create 5 topics on trending topics currently that I can develop into jokes. Here we go. AI chatbots in daily life. With all the hype around AI chatbots, I can't wait for my coffee maker to start giving me life advice. Electric cars. Electric cars are becoming so popular that soon even gas stations will have to offer free Wi-Fi while you wait for your battery to charge. And then reality TV stars running for office, cryptocurrency crash, sustainability trends. Everyone's talking about sustainability, but at this point, my reusable bag has a better social life than me. It's
I did not laugh once.
exactly. And there's nothing in here of substance to write a joke on. What I do is if I want to do something like that, I will go on Twitter and look at what's trending, and I'll find a funny angle on a headline. Like if it's not Twitter anymore. I'm going to keep calling it
X.
Twitter.
Yeah, I think most people still do.
Yeah. If I'm going to trending, right? So I'm going to go to trending on Twitter. Nike, right? Nike's getting hit hard from the tariffs. There's probably some joke in there about they won't be able to afford the suicide nets in China or something like that, I don't know who Emma Frost is. I don't even know what any of this is.
There's so much information, but you're okay. So then you're
Yeah.
preserving the authenticity of the joke, and I think that that's really good because I think we are a very long way away from, finding that creativity. Like you had like all the AI music or whatever that's coming out. People believe in the individual who's made the music. Like, think of a rock star or think of like any kind of like, anybody, even Kanye, you think of him at, whatever he's done, but he is a personality, and so you're branding him based off of the human being that he is and not so much, it's just like a catchy tune. So that's interesting. Okay. All right. So
I think you could not fail at anything if you are just authentic with what you do. Because even if it doesn't work out, it was never going to be something different if you had a fake who you were being in order to make it work.
right.
So if you just are like, hey, this is how I feel, this is how I text, this is how I want to text. Now, some people are just bad at it. Some people are rude. Some people are like, I look at how my dad texts, right? Like if you didn't know him, you would just think he's mad at you all the time because he is just an older guy who's straight to the point, Like I asked him the other day, I said, hey, do you want to go to Cubs opening day? Too cold. You know, but like he wasn't trying to be like, no, I don't want to go with you. He was just going, it's too cold. I not a chance. I'm going to drive to the city, sit out in 40-degree weather. Let's go in June. Yeah. If he had a AI voice texting for him, that's what it would say.
It's like, that might seem rude. Why not include XYZ information? Yeah. No, that's interesting. Yeah. So, I mean, okay, what's the worst financial decision that you've ever made?
I would say the worst financial decisions I've ever made have been not making a financial decision. I'm fairly conservative and relatively business-minded when it comes to money. So, I mean, I know a lot of people who get $1, spend $2, you know, just like, hey, we made some money, let's go spend it. Right. I've always been a saver. I used to put my Halloween candy as a kid in the freezer and save it. And I remember my stepdad being like, it's candy, eat it. Why don't you want it? You're not eating all your favorite candy. I was like, I'm going to save these Snickers bars for later, you know? And, you know, just like weird shit like that.
How much later though?
You know, I would wait for like something like a reason to eat it.
A special reason.
A special occasion.
Please elaborate on this. What would be that special occasion?
Oh, you know, I mean, I probably was in third grade. So maybe like there was a new episode of a show I really liked. Oh, I'll have the Snickers bar then. Or like, you know, now feels like the right time, you know?
You were really romanticizing your life back then.
Yeah. I my whole life. It would be the equivalent to like if you gave me like a 30-year-old bottle of scotch now, I'm not going to drink this right now. We'll wait for the occasion. That's how I would be like with my Halloween candy, you know? And with everything. So I've never been somebody who's just rash with money, but there's been a lot of things I wish I had done. I specifically remember I was fortunate enough to put money into Bitcoin early on.
Yeah.
Which a lot of people told me was dumb, and I did it anyway. But then there was a point when Dogecoin was becoming big.
Yeah.
And was very anti that because I was like, it's a meme coin. I don't want to get too into it. But then I just had this feeling. I woke up one day, I'm like, it's pretty fucking cheap. I have a feeling it's going to like skyrocket. And then like, who knows? But the minute it does, I'll just sell.
Yeah.
And I was like thinking, what if I just put like $1,500 in here?
Yeah.
Like, what if I just did that, you know? And then I was thinking about doing it, and I didn't. I didn't for a variety of different reasons. And mostly listened to other people, which, you know, sometimes you have to do, but sometimes you really got to follow your gut. And the next day, it skyrocketed.
Oh.
And I did the math, and that $1,500 would have turned into like $275,000. So it was one of those. Those are like I would say my financial fails. Yeah, I mean, as a kid, plenty, but like who was good with money as a kid?
Right.
Yeah.
But actually, it's good to know that you're actually good with money now because a lot of people are not, you know, and a lot of it comes from like that whole, perhaps maybe also how you were raised, you know, like people have that connotation where it's like, oh, people who are rich are bad, you know, or, you know, they don't think that they, you know, so I think that money has very specific attitudes towards it too, you know, and, you know, also what is enough?
Yeah, the people who are rich are bad mentality has always made me laugh. First of all, define rich. And it's usually those people who say stuff like that is you have something I don't. It doesn't even have to be like billionaire level. It could be you have a car I don't. You're bad.
Right.
Or like this whole movement that was happening like landlords are bad. You know, like stop the landlords. It's like, well then where are you going to live? Do you want corporations to own all the houses? What is the other option, you know? And it usually comes down to you have something I want, and it should be accessible to me too, which is true.
Yeah.
That's not a false statement,
yes.
But how you go about it says a lot. So there's no notion of are rich people bad? Sometimes. If you are poor people bad, sometimes, you know, there's just good and bad people, and sometimes they're successful, sometimes they're not. I will say I've seen a lot of people get successful, fall back down. I've seen a lot of people never get successful, and I've seen a lot of people get successful. The one thing that the people who get successful all have in common is they're not worried about what anybody else is doing. And there's levels to it, right? Like poverty is a big problem, right? Like if you can't find food or like clothe your kids, huge problem. But if you're worried about like comparing yourself to your neighbor, and usually the most vocal people about stuff aren't, because if you really can't clothe or feed your kids, you're worried about getting them clothes or food. You're not out here saying all this crazy whatever.
Excess stuff.
Excess stuff, you know, like, and that's who people should be focused on helping, not Joey, who's like, well, he got a car. I don't have a car. The system's rigged.
Right.
It's like, well, Joey, you dropped out of high school and
Right.
like, you know, like life choices too.
Right.
Like
The victim mentality also there is.
a little bit. So I find that notion of the rich are bad. I think people are evil and sometimes they become rich.
Right. Agreed. I like that.
And also money can turn you too. There's levels to it.
Yeah.
But you asked me a question and I forgot. Sorry.
About being enough. Well, fails when it comes to money. Like,
yeah.
what would you say to anybody who, might have had some failures in money? What are you thinking?
I mean, I guess I've had like a lot of failures. Like I by no means have it figured out. Like I definitely, it's not like I'm retired, or it's not like I have like, you know, I would like to be at a place one day of financial freedom, and that is a goal for me. However, I have no right giving anybody advice on money.
Right. Okay.
I did take a job once when I was like 21 or 22. I don't know how I was pretty young, where it was like a job where you help people figure out like how to balance a budget, how to write a check, how to do your taxes. It was like this course they were teaching to people in like the inner city of St. Paul.
Yeah.
And
which is so important. I think that even in like non-inner city places, they need to be teaching you how to save money and do your taxes. And
totally. It should be a class in school.
yeah, it should be, but it's not.
The funny part was that they had me teach the class.
Okay.
Who I was at the time, I like had no business teaching this class. And I remember like my grandparents called one day and they're like, "Hey, how's it going?" I was like, "I think I got a new job." And I told my grandpa what I was doing. He's like, "It's like the blind leading the blind." He was like, "You live in a basement closet room that you pay $150 a month for rent. Why the hell are you teaching people?" And I was like, "Because they're giving me $16 an hour." And he goes, "Okay." You know, but like, you know.
How did they pick you?
I applied.
Oh, I see. I like that. See, you gotta try.
You gotta. I mean, I did it for like
shot.
a day or two, and then I realized it was like some sort of pyramid scheme I was getting into.
Uh-oh.
But people showed up for the class. People, you know, like whatever. But yeah, I have no business teaching people about money.
So no extreme couponing, no credit hacking, nothing, none of that for you.
No, and if I did have one piece of advice for people, it would be stop extreme couponing, stop credit hacking. The whole Gary V mentality, sell all your furniture, sleep in a tent in your yard. I saw him on a podcast talking about if you don't have money, you got to go to garage sales, find stuff you could sell on eBay for $15, $20. There's no excuse to be broke. The idea that I'm going to spend 20 hours of my day trying to make $35 is insane, and it's such a bad mentality. Like the hustle of it, I get, but the idea that I have to. Like stop getting that coffee every day. Look what that added up to. The coffee is $1.75.
Yeah,
We live in Chicago, maybe $3.
Yeah.
You don't get a coffee every day, that is $90.
Yeah.
And no one's really getting it every day. Let's call it $70. Is that a lot of money? Yeah, there's some people it's a lot of money. Is it going to change your life? Not by a long shot is $70 a month going to change your life. If you wait over the course of a year, yeah, that's $840, right?
Well, you're good at math.
But but you know, like, is $840 going to make a difference? Maybe a little bit, you know, but like no one ever got to the point of being financially free by not getting the coffee or by selling all their furniture,
Right.
or by whatever. Like there's ways to do things,
Work
and there's ways to
efficiently.
for sure not do things.
Yeah, interesting. No, for sure. So here, I think that this is what I'm hearing and looking at all the topic areas that we discussed, it seems that you have a very balanced approach to a lot of your insights, you know, and actually, we did not delve into this before this conversation. You know, I got kind of like a very general kind of idea of your thoughts on things,
Yeah.
but I'm actually very pleasantly surprised because you're
thank
very
you.
thoughtful, it seems. And
nice.
the thing is though, I think that it is important to realize that when it comes to failure, right, failing in big things, because a lot of these things that we did talk about, relationships and money and you know, just career and changing all of these things, it's always like the smaller things, your mindset towards these smaller failures really extend towards your larger decision making when something really bad happens, like being broke or like, you know, losing your home. Or key takeaway, if your final last takeaway when it comes to any advice in life. And I would say serious advice when it comes to specifically because comedy, even filmmaking, being in a band. When you tell your parents that you're going to go do these things, they're like, well, like they just want your security, right? Like
Oh
they
yeah,
want you
they
to do
hate
well.
all they hated.
Yeah.
They hated all of it. Yes.
Yeah. But it takes a certain kind of resilience to be able to want to get up time and time again, because like you said, like you have to have like an illusion of I can do it. And I think that goes
or even a delusion.
a delusion. Yeah. I mean, but in business too, I think
Yeah.
that in so many different, ways that you have to kind of like propel yourself. You can't just be skilled. You need to put in the work too. So tell any advice to anybody, a young comedian that might be starting or somebody that wants to start their business, somebody that maybe has had quite a few failures in a row and is just feeling like, I don't know what to do with myself. Like what would you think in terms of the way that, and you have been handling it for a long time now, which is impressive because it is hard to do these things. That's not an easy thing to do, to get up in the middle of and to make jokes and even like, to put yourself out there that way. So what advice would you give to somebody that maybe is kind of feeling down on themselves? Like how do you hype yourself up?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's levels to it, and obviously hindsight's 20/20. But if I had to pick raw talent or just motivation and drive, I would pick motivation and drive every day, because the people with the talent tend to kind of sit back and ride on their talent, and very few people are actually talented enough to get somewhere. But if you have a little bit of talent and a lot of motivation and drive, you'll get a lot further. Granted, you have to fail along the way a lot. And if you're failing, you're doing something right and you're learning. Like I started a lot of businesses. I tried to have a clothing company. That was the dumbest thing I ever did. I don't even like clothes. But I started a clothing company because I thought I could make money at it. But I learned how to make an LLC, and it was a charitable clothing company. So I learned how to make contracts, and I got all these different charities to sign these contracts with me and put on events. And I lost a ton of money, and I failed miserably. But like I wouldn't not have done that because now going forward, I'm better at certain things for it. I also can look back and go, here's where I failed and why. And if I were to do it again, I'd do it differently. And now I'm at the point where I'm like launching a merch company along with my my podcast and my stand-up. And I'm like, okay, I know what I did wrong. I know the people to get the clothes from. I know the wholesalers. I still have those relationships. Let me do that. Like even now, 10 years later. So like even the dumbest failures you have will help. Adversity is your friend to a point. I'm not talking about in life. I'm talking about a thing you want to do, right? Like adversity sucks in life, but like I want to be a comedian, right? Yeah, of course your parents are going to tell you no. Of course everybody around you is going, what the fuck are you doing? And they should. And if you're not strong enough to push past that first barrier, you're not going to go anywhere else. So like you should look at it as like obstacles to climb and get over. Because yeah, once you get far enough where they're going, hey, you're kind of good years later, to the point where they're going, you're my favorite comedian. I believe in you. There was 1,000 other things through there, and you never would have. The people who feel like they never got heard or didn't get a chance at something didn't want to try hard enough.
Yeah.
There was nothing stopping me from starting comedy. There was absolutely nothing. I would have traded anything. I would have done anything. I had to do it. And then I just kept doing it. And then by no means do I consider myself successful, but I'm in a much better place than I was. And I'm on my way to being successful. And that's just the path. And you'll fail a lot. The most important gig you've ever gotten, you'll bomb, and then a year later you realize that gig wasn't shit. It didn't matter if I bombed. There's so much of that, and you just keep going, and you just never give up.
Yeah, and I love that, and it's so true, and I think it applies to like so many different things, and I think that would be very valuable for someone to know is just keep going. Just keep going. Just if you want it bad enough, just do it.
Unless you really suck, then stop.
Yeah. Yep. Agree. Okay, so you have to tell us where we can reach you. I know you have a podcast.
Yeah.
You guys are in between seasons, so I'm very lucky to have you on here, which is amazing. And I
thanks.
really enjoyed this conversation. Where can we reach you? Where can we come see you in your shows? Where
Yeah.
can we watch your movies? movies? Where can we buy your merch? You're just doing so many things.
Yeah, so you could find the podcast is called BK's Chop Shop. It's out literally anywhere you can watch a podcast, but if you want to watch the videos, it's on Spotify and YouTube. You can find me on Instagram. It's Brad Kofman, Kofman. Everybody spells it wrong, but it's Kofman. And my tour schedule is there all the time. Hit me up if you want me to come to your city. Big show in Chicago, April 19th. And by the way, you can see me in Chicago pretty much any night when I'm in town. I'm usually at Laugh Factory, Zanies, or Lincoln Lodge. Those are kind of our three clubs. I just kind of hop around. Big show on April 19th. I'm doing Matthew Moore, who you had on the podcast last week, I think. He hit me up because I had JC Rivera, the bear champ from Chicago, on the podcast. He's the guy who paints all the bears all over, everywhere in Chicago and Miami and actually around the world now. And I had him on, and he goes, we do JC's Chicago, like, art gallery show every year. Be cool to do like a comedy thing to help promote like one of these shows. And we started this idea. It's called Don't Touch the Comedians, where I'm putting together a lineup of some of my favorite comedians in the city, and it's all in the art gallery. So there's going to be a liquor sponsor. There's going to be all the art up by a like kind of a comic artist who makes like funny art. Rather, he's not a comic, but he's like makes funny art. And you get to hang out at the gallery for like an hour before, see all the painting, schmooze, drink, talk, and then the comedy show is going to happen right after, right there in the gallery. So it's like kind of this new kind of idea.
So it's like that episode of Sex and the City. Did you watch that one where like there's a lady? Okay, well, I'll tell you what happened. Yeah, she goes to, I don't know, whatever, a gallery, and there's a lady that is like not eating, and she's like the art, right? She's the art.
Oh, I've seen that before in other things.
So is this like you guys are the comedians, you can't touch you?
No, nobody's going to be naked with a platter of sushi on them.
Okay.
Maybe, I don't know. I didn't really check what everybody else is doing. I won't be. I'm just going to do stand-up.
Okay.
But it's a stand-up show in the gallery.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's promoting the gallery, promoting stand-up. And for me, it's just a cool place to do stand-up. It's going to be at the top of the water tower.
Yeah.
So it's just a cool environment and get a whole new crowd of people.
I love it. Amazing. Well, thank you so much for being here. Fun conversation. I really enjoyed it. And hope you come back.
Yeah, I will. Insights. Yeah, we'll have you on the Chop Shop too.
Yeah, I love it. Okay. All right. Well, thank you. Yay.